and welcome back to my crafty space. My name is Crystal, and in today's video, I am going to go through the process of story planning using the Listen Story Kit from Ali Edwards for Story Kit Crush. This is one of two kits that I am going to be working on crushing throughout the month of March. So I have Listen, which was released back in May of 2019. And I'm also going to be working with the Begin Story Kit, which was released in January of 2022. So a newer kit and an older kit. During today's video, I am going to put you on fast forward and take you through the process of deconstructing this whole kit and then putting it into various stories that I want to tell using the product. This can be a video that will help you to come up with some different ideas for stories or for design concepts in all different sizes on the scrapbooking spectrum. So I hope you get a whole lot of inspiration today from watching this video. Without further ado, let's go ahead, get you on fast forward and work through story planning this kit. One of the things that I want to show you before we split this whole thing apart is that when I get started with my story planning, first what I do is print off the handout that comes in the Ali Edwards story classes online. I load those into Photoshop and resize them to fit inside of my story planning album, and then print them off, hole punch them, and stick those in there. And then I also generally like to sit down and jot down a bunch of different ideas for stories I could tell using the lens of Listen. So I do have a list there to the left-hand side of my screen where you can see I've written out a bunch of different ideas for stories, and then what I'll do is I'll take that list and compare it to the products that are included in the kit and see which ones make sense based on the product that I have to work with. Now, one of the things I really like to do with story kits like this is to identify the different components of the kit and try to use all of one similar item on a single spread. So an example of that is the story cards that say currently listening to, and they are in a rainbow of colors. There are 10 of them total, and I believe they are roughly 2.5 inches wide by maybe 2 inches tall. So my first thought with that was using them for Project Life. So I stuck them all out. I'm thinking I can probably do a Project Life layout with those where I've got at least one of the page protectors has 9 of the 3x4 cards. And then I could add one of those story cards to the bottom of 9 photos and tell some context to, the story that those photos are telling. So that is definitely one that I want to put to the side and keep in mind for that. Another example of this are the cork notes that you just saw me move into one section that I am dividing out. I want to figure out a way to use all 5 of those cork pieces on the same layout. It helps me with consistency. It helps me to just use the product. And oftentimes I find when I am challenging myself to use all of a particular product on a page that it pulls me into this really creative mindset of, trying to creatively figure out ways to get them all on the page. So that is that. Now, while I've been talking, I have been dividing out a lot of these cards here, trying to figure out different stories I can tell with them. A couple that came immediately to mind, the one in the middle where it says, funny how a melody sounds like a memory. And I love the idea of taking that and combining it with all of those cork pieces to tell a story about music that brings me back to my days of being in band. So when I was in high school and part of my college, I was a part of a number of musical groups, anything from jazz band to drum corps to marching band and everything in between. I did it all. I played multiple instruments, and it's just a part of my life that was really important for so long, and it's still important, but I don't necessarily play musical instruments anymore. It's almost like that was another lifetime ago, if that makes sense. So that card really made me think about how certain melodies really bring me back to the memory of being in band and when music meant so much and was so much a part of my identity. So that is definitely a story I want to tell. Another one that jumped out as a story to tell is the card that says sounds today or today's sounds. And then I also have the acrylic word listen with that. One of my ideas for a story to tell this time is to actually go throughout the day and record some sounds of our day. So things that are really mundane, like maybe the coffee pot brewing, or maybe the dryer tossing around, our clothes in it, all the way to stuff that's maybe more specific to that day. Depending on the day of the week, we do different things, like Wednesdays are game nights and Fridays we watch a movie. And so depending on the day, we could get some really day specific sounds. And then I also wanted to get some family sounds. So, things that the kids are doing, and ways that we are working and ways that we are relaxing, and what does that really sound like? And then to compile that into images that help to identify those sounds, and potentially creating a video with them as well. So there is an auditory component to that story. So that's one I'm thinking about there, and that's where I've got the listen acrylic, and I'm thinking that could be something maybe on a really big scale. I've also got the card that is a view of the ocean. That one immediately, of course, made me think of my sister's wedding, which was in Mexico on the beach. So I am in the process of putting together a wedding album for her. It's something that's going to be a work in progress for a while, because I used all of the Glow story kit for that album, but there are still lots more stories to tell. And I like the idea of letting those stories take on different types of lenses. So I'm challenging myself to try and tell a story in that album with all of these different story kits until I feel like I have enough stories that the album is done, if that makes sense. So that beach scene there is definitely going to be put into this wedding album, because it's like it's meant to be. And then I also added in a 3x4 card that says currently listening to. I like the idea of potentially talking about their ceremony and the different things that we were listening to. So for example, listening to them say their vows, or listening to, they did a sand pouring ceremony. So maybe listening to the grains of sand pouring, or their ceremony was in Spanish and in English. So, listening to the two different languages being spoken by the officiant. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can take the lens of listening and apply it to a story like that. So I think it'll be a fun way to get some additional context into the story of their wedding ceremony. A lot of these I'll talk more in detail about as I am sketching them out. But the next part of my process is once I've got my cards figured out in their different story piles, we'll call them, and then I've added in the embellishments and the chipboard and all those pieces that I feel like will go nicely with the story that I'm telling. Once I have that done, I then pull over my binder that is full of planning sheets, and these are something that I have created. I do have a link to them in the description box, so if you're looking for something like this, you can go and grab them from that link down below. So I printed them all out. I keep a bunch of them in the story album, or story planner, I guess is what it's called, just to make it easier for me to find them and to organize them. So I pulled that over and selected a sheet for each of the different stories so I can gauge the different sizes and where I want things to go and where I want stories to live and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so this first one here is the story that's going to be about my experiences with band and how music reminds me of that part of my life. And so I had considered, first of all, making this a 6x8 layout and having one half have the journaling card there, the title card, and then the cork pieces, and just kind of figuring out how to make it a 6x8 type of layout. And then I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. So I put aside the current soundtrack, and I think I'll choose to do a different story with that one instead. And what I'll do here is turn this into a 6x12 layout rather than a 6x8 layout. And that way I can have all of the pieces all on one page, and it'll just live inside of my 12x12 album. So this is just me trying to figure out, like, how do I want to use all of these pieces? Maybe I'll do a flip up, or, what do I want to do here? The thing that I really love is that all of those cork pieces fit together to span across a 6-inch width. So I can use all of them together and make it look like they are music notes that are kind of like floating or moving along, creating some kind of song, right? So here's where I'm going to grab that sheet and we're going to get to sketching. So with that in mind, I am going to make this into a 6x12. I'm going to add the title card there to the top of the page. And I did debate this for a little bit. Like, do I want to have the notes at the top, or do I want to have the notes at the bottom? What looks the best? What I end up going with is having the notes at the bottom. I felt like it was a little too, I don't know, like it was a little too chaotic to have the notes at the top. It felt a little better grounded to have the words at the top, the journaling card, and that big block of orange. It just felt like it was, I don't know, like top heavy. I would rather it be top heavy than to have the top feel chaotic, which I don't know if I'm describing myself super well, but that's just kind of, that's the feel, I suppose, right? So what I want to do is take that darker kind of musical looking card, and I want to use a piece of it at the top of the orange card and a piece at the bottom of the orange card, kind of flanking the top and the bottom, and then to have that whole piece flip up and have a photo underneath. Then right underneath the cards, I'm going to add my journaling directly onto the 6x12 canvas there, and then have my music notes at the bottom. And I think that this will end up looking much better balanced. And I also like that it allows me to put a picture in here. It allows it to be a larger picture, because now I can print that at roughly, 6 inches by 8 inches. So it is a way for me to include all the things I want to include, but to not take up too much space or, have to have 2 whole layouts that I'm designing. So because I decided not to use these pieces right here with the band story, I am pivoting with them and doing something different. So I've pulled out an additional stamp set that is from Futurecraft. It's called Playlist. Now, Futurecraft is no longer in business, so their stamps are no longer available. But if you so happen to have this stamp set, this is a great one to add in with your Listen story kit. It has a cassette tape image on it with a filler portion as well. And what I thought I could do is use that cassette tape to create some kind of repeat pattern on one side, and use the Music to My Ears card, cut that down a little bit and put that into the middle, which you'll see here in a minute. I'll sketch this out. So I'm going to put that in the middle. I'm going to stamp the cassettes all around it, and then use that as a home for talking about artists potentially that I am really enjoying right now, or, the card says current soundtrack, and even though it says current soundtrack, it got me thinking about the soundtrack of my life. Like, what songs were really important to me at different points in my life. So I thought, why not tell a story about the songs and the artists that kind of played out throughout the course of my life, and this is now a soundtrack of my life type of story. I could then throw those all into a playlist on Spotify or on Pandora, and then create a QR code and include that on the layout as well. I thought that would be a really fun way to talk about music, and music that has meant a lot to me from other artists. This next one, I was inspired by the card that says "This Conversation," and then there's also a chipboard piece that says "So loved this conversation." And what this made me think about is a conversation that I really loved having recently with my friends Janet and Josie on the Paper Talk podcast. So I am now a monthly segment on the Paper Talk podcast, which means that the three of us get together and chat about crafting and all kinds of stuff, storytelling, writing, layouts, projects, all that stuff. And it's just so fun. I could talk about scrapbooking and storytelling all day long. And it was just a really great conversation. So I want to document that, especially since it's something that's really relevant and really like it's happening right now. It's current. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to layer up a bunch of those pieces on a picture, like the main thumbnail picture of that podcast episode, and just talk about why that conversation, was so great, and what it's like to be back behind the podcast mic again. This next one, I was inspired by not the journaling card, yes, that one too, but the chipboard piece that says, "Turn it up." And this got me thinking about music that we're listening to right now, currently, as our family, and what are songs that we're like turning it up, like get that song playing and turn it up. And there are quite a few songs that we each individually love, and we love also as a family. So for example, one of my favorite songs that I just love to jam to is Bills by Lunch Money Lewis. And it's just about like paying the bills and having to work really hard to feed your family. And I love it. It's a great song. It's just a great song. Jonah is obsessed with the song, The Excavator Song from Blippi, which Blippi is a fictional character, kind of like a Blue's Clues type of show. And he talks a lot about trucks, and Jonah's obsessed with trucks. So the Excavator Song plays all the time. And Isabella loves a song called Macaroni and Cheese. And so that's a song that's playing all the time. So my idea is to take some pictures of each of us with headphones on. So these will be like, I'm going to take the picture for this story. I don't already have these. So I'll have everybody put headphones on, take pictures of us all, and then use those puffy stickers as bullet points for 8 different songs that we are currently playing in our house right now. Okay, moving on. This layout right here is one that I want to create inside of a traveler's notebook, and specifically inside of a pocket page traveler's notebook, which means that there is a clear plastic pocket in between each of the 2 white page spreads, right? So on one side, I want to talk about sounds I love, and on the other side, I want to talk about sounds I don't love. And I'm debating right now what I want to do for the full portion. Do I want to put a photo? I'm thinking potentially taking a photo of my kids playing nicely, and then potentially taking a photo of my kids fighting, which happens every day. So there's always opportunity to take that picture. So maybe I want to do that and then kind of talk about those types of sounds. I'm not totally sure yet. And then I want to take the heart card there and cut out that heart shape, add a photo onto the back of it, and stick that down inside of the pocket. And then I also threw in my Listen Story stamp, thinking that I might want to use the little tiny icons. There's a speaker and headphones and music notes and all that kind of stuff, and stamp those on vellum to create confetti to add inside the pocket like a shaker pocket. So I'm excited about that one. I think that will be really fun. All right, so when we talk about stories with listening, one of the first stories that always comes to mind for me is Overheard. I love to capture things that my children are saying, and not even my children, things that I'm saying or my husband's saying or my friends are saying. I love capturing those types of details and telling those stories, because with my children, it really shows a lot of their development throughout their life. How are they developing and maturing and learning? And then for the adults in the family or the friends group, it shows kind of interests and humor and how all of that changes and evolves over time as well. So that one, I want to use the listening card and the overheard card to capture some things that my kids have been saying, and then to include either a picture of the kids or a couple pictures of the kids, or something along those lines, so that I can just tell a story about things I'm overhearing. I also included there were two tab chipboard pieces that I'm going to add in there as well, potentially making the cards flip ups. So we'll see how that goes. This one takes me a minute to figure out what I want to do, and I'm actually going to show you two separate sketches for two different ideas, because I was struggling with what I wanted this one to look like. I was thinking about making a 3x8, and I'm going to end up making a 12x12 instead. So we're going to go from the smallest size to the biggest size, but you know, it is what it is. So I have this card here that says loving this. It's got the music sheets on it. I'm going to cut it in half here and add half of it into a pile for project life stuff down the line. Then there are these two half circle chipboards and a hexagon chipboard that says this song. So what I'm thinking here is potentially making a couple of circles that will go like down the side of a 3x8. And the circles themselves will be 2 inches. So I'm figuring if I've got like a 2-inch circle and a 2-inch circle that's now 4 inches, I could do one more 2-inch circle that would be 6 inches out of the 8, and then I could add a 2-inch portion at the top to create some kind of title piece. I wasn't super loving the pink music pattern card, so I went into my stash and pulled out some additional cards from the Storytelling Basics collection from Ali Edwards, some that just had a little bit brighter colors, one that's got a diagonal stripe, one that's got some plus signs, and I'll actually pull out one that is black and white as well, just to have some variety a little bit later. So here's where you can see I'm thinking, okay, I can add a 2-inch portion at the top there, have the title be this song, and then do 3 different 2-inch circles where I can add journaling about maybe a specific song that has a lot of meaning for me. So here's where that's going to come into play. Now I could add a photo on the right hand side. I could have this be a no photo type of layout. If I were to add a photo and I'm talking about a song, this could be maybe a picture of, like, let's say I've got my phone with the album or the song on my phone, maybe on a music player or whatever, and then I can take a photo from above, like a top-down type of photo where you can see the phone in my hands, you can see the song, but you don't really see me. It's not necessarily a selfie. That could be a great way to take a picture representing a story like this one. I do that kind of stuff a lot. Then I also thought, okay, well, what if I want to have more journaling, or what if I want to have more photos? I thought another idea would be to permanently adhere down the pattern paper and the chipboard pieces, but then to add a brad onto the bottom corner of one of the circle pieces or one of the half circles. So then you could twist it to the side and reveal more underneath it. That's an interesting idea for making that piece interactive. But then I started to think, well, gee, if we're going to talk about music, I've got these 2 half circles. What if I took the half circle and made it into like a giant note, like a giant musical note? And then my brain just started spinning like, okay, wait, what if I find more half circles? And what if I find some chipboard, like full circles? And what if I use pattern paper and I just create an entire page that looks like a sheet of music? And my journaling can be in half circles on this piece. I don't know. Sometimes a piece will just like spark an idea. And I think a lot of this came from the chipboard that says my story with music. And I felt like I needed more room to put in story about my life with music, or how music has played a part in my life. So it just, I don't know. Sometimes I can't even tell you where these ideas come from, but we're going with it. I'm going to make this happen. So I've pulled out all these pieces. I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, how many lines of music can I have here? How many notes do I want to have? that sort of thing. I'm thinking I want to vary the sizes of the notes. So have some of them be the 2-inch circles, have some of them be 3 inches, have some be maybe like 1 inch or 1.5 inch or something in there. And then to have a number of the notes be half decorative and half journaling. So you can see how this is starting to come together. I'm like, yep, I'll use that hexagon. That can be a note too. Like, it's good enough. I pulled out in the upper left-hand corner there are 4 additional chipboard pieces that I pulled out actually they are all from One Little Word product from 2021. I think they all came from, actually no, 3 of those pieces came from a mini kit, but the one that's black that says enjoy this enjoy this, that was from this year's One Little Word kit. So just pulling random pieces out and making it work. So then I took some not pattern paper, just regular copy paper. I punched out some circles so I could gauge sizes and figure out like, where is this all going to fit? And I'm just going to move stuff around, play around with it and see what I like and what I don't, and kind of go with it. So we're almost to the point of where I'm happy with the placement, and ultimately I'm going to end up doing 3 lines of music. So you can kind of see where that's going to end up. And then in order to make it look like music and not just like, notes floating in the middle of nowhere, I will end up drawing some lines that show 3 different lines or bars or whatever you want to call it of music. So kind of like this. And then that is my sketch. This one, I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be pretty cool to do. I'm thinking I will machine stitch the lines for the music lines and then maybe hand stitch the connecting pieces or the tails of the notes themselves. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of that when we cross that bridge. All right, so here's the one for my sister's wedding album. This one is going to be very simple. Most of the layouts I did or that I am creating in the wedding album are very simple because the photos themselves are gorgeous. So like I feel like I want to have the focus be on the photos and the journaling be not necessarily an afterthought, but more of like once you're done staring in awe at the wedding photo, then you can kind of go in and get into the details of the story. So that's been my design concept, I suppose, or the way that I have made decisions on how to create layouts for her album. Now, as I was going through this, I don't necessarily love the sentiment on that journaling card. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I am considering how can I cover it up. I have this wood word that just says amazing that came from Colorcast Designs from a while ago. And then I also have the heart there that's got a palm tree and it's like overlooking the ocean. Very similar to what the card itself looks like. That also came from Colorcast Design from, maybe last summer. A long time ago. I purchased them because I knew my sister was getting married in Mexico, and so I knew I wanted some pieces that had a very tropical feel, and so that's where that came from. So I'm thinking, yes, I somehow want to cover up this sentiment here and add the wooden amazing over top. I pulled out a couple of cards thinking maybe I could trim down a card and add that on there, but I wasn't loving that either. So instead I'm going to pull out some of these stickers here and see if I can use that to cover up the sentiment. And they kind of almost fit over the whole thing. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to just stick it into the pocket and we will figure out the rest when I actually put this together later. But it at least gives me a starting point of, what I am thinking for that card. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to use the stripe card that's underneath the wood veneer as a potential for adding into the layout. Because I'm working in a 10x8 for the wedding album, the photo itself will reside outside of the page protector. So it will be a full 10x8, a little bit bigger than that photo. For the opposite side, I want to use 3x4s, and the page protectors for the 10 by 8s do not have 3 by 4s. So I'm going to use a 6 by 8 page protector that has one where it's a 6 by 4 and then where there's the divided with 2 3 by 4s. So that will allow me to include the 6 by 4 journaling card, and then it will also allow me to include the currently listening to journaling card. For the last spot there, I'm either going to do a photo or I'm going to do this stripe with the wood veneer heart on top. So I'm going to leave that decision for later when I'm actually going to design that inside of Photoshop. All right, so then this one here is the today's sound. So this is the story I was talking about where I want to record sounds throughout the day and tell the story about like it's almost like, think of this like day in the life, but with sounds. So the photos that I'm going to take will be based on the sounds that I would like to record as part of our day, if that makes sense. So I know that the Today's Sounds card is 4 inches wide. So I know I want to have a section of my 12 by 12 here be divided by the 4 inches. So I'll have actually 3 that are divided by 4 inches because that evenly divides the 12 by 12, right? Then I'm going to add a bit, a chunk really, of the stripe card, which that stripe card, that was part of the Listen Story Kit. That did come in the Listen Story Kit. So I've got the stripe card there. That's going to be a chunk of it at the top and then a little sliver underneath the Today's Sounds title. I want to use the acrylic piece on top of the stripe at the top. So it says like Listen Today's Sounds. And then I will use the puffy circle stickers as bullet points for 8 different sounds of the day. And I will do a little bit of journaling on each of those 8 different sounds. So that's going to be that. I've also got the 8 different photos that you can see there. So we've got 8 photos that will correspond to that. And then I also wrote down like QR code, question mark, do I want to actually record the sounds and make that part of my story as well, like have a video and link that up with a QR code. So I'm thinking about that. Last but not least, I am going to do a very rough sketch of a Project Life page because I don't want to forget what my idea was for using these supplies. So what I would like to do is to create one side of a 9 by 12 Project Life spread, because I'm working in a 9 by 12. I want one that has the Love This. Those are older products that I just pulled out of my stash. I believe they were from the Best Story Kit and they are rubber. So I'm going to add Love This to the top portion in the teal, and then the white area I can use my date stamp in. So that becomes my title card. I've also included the Sounds of Life Right Now card. I feel like that's perfect for this particular story. If I'm assuming I'm going to tell this week, I'm not assuming, I am going to tell the stories of this week through the lens of listening and sounds. So that will make a whole lot of sense for this layout. And then I have 10 of these little story cards. Now I know I want to use 9 of them for half of the layout where they will become the journaling spots for 9 different photos. So that leaves me with one extra one that I'm going to find a way to use on the opposite side. And then, potentially have photos and use up the rest of these products on there as well. But here's where I'm going to draw in the little story cards just as a reminder of, this is what I want this to look like. Don't forget when you do this week to use these cards as journaling pieces. So I think that's going to be really, really fun, colorful, and just a different way to tell the stories of a week, which is something I always love. I'm also jotting down the colors, just FYI, so that I can remember that I want to do this in rainbow order as well. So, just trying to gather down some of those details so that later when I pull this out to put together the week of Project Life, a lot of it's already figured out for me, which is really kind of nice. All right, so I'm going to stick this down into the story pocket here, and then that is going to complete my story planning with the Listen Kit. All right, friends, that completes my story planning with the Listen Story Kit. I am so excited by so many of these stories this time. I love when a kit helps me to get really creative and think outside of the box, and that's definitely what this one did for me this time. I hope you enjoyed seeing how my story ideas came to being. I have 9 total plus a week of project life to do with this kit, and now I'm just really excited to dive in, go and figure out my photos, go and do my journaling, get everything ready to go, and then come back here and share the process of putting these together with you. If this helped to spark an idea for the Listen Kit for you, I would love to know what story you would like to tell with this kit, or if you've already worked with Listen in the past, what is a favorite story that you have told with this kit? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, I would love a thumbs up, and also make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already so you can catch all of my future crafty videos as well. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye, friends.